Ultralearning by Scott Young. Welcome to my channel. My name is Samuel and I want to make self-growth normal. If you want to make self-growth normal, because I don't want to do it alone and I've never met someone who doesn't want to make self-growth normal, then make sure to smash that like button. The foreword of this book is written by the Atomic Habits author, James Clear. Very smart man talking about how unconventional of a thinker Scott Young is, and how this book's info separates itself from that of others. He says that learning something and practicing something sound similar, but they create drastically different results. Passive learning creates knowledge, but active learning creates skill. Learning fast is something that, newsflash, anyone can do. It's not just something a genius does. The only reason not everyone does it is because not everyone knows how. But this book actually does tell you how. The beginning of the book and sort of the end, different moments in between, talks about how to get an MIT education without going to MIT. And the compelling reason to get the book, as the author says, is that a 4-year degree used to be an assurance of a solid job, but now it's barely a foot in the door. The best careers demand sophisticated skills that you're not likely to stumble upon by chance. Not just programmers, but managers and doctors, and many are struggling to keep up. It's a huge reason I'm grateful for my choice not to go to college. Ultralearning is intense. It's where you learn how to do something super fast. Everything I've ever learned how to do fast, given what I got from this book, it only makes sense that I learned how to do those things fast. It's not exactly easy. I mean, putting time aside for your schedule, using lots of energy, looking at situations directly with a lot of focus. Again, it's just not that easy. But if you look at it in the long run, it is kind of a small investment. It is a powerful tool. It's that jump start that you get from smashing the like button if you haven't already for the YouTube algorithm, because it helps with ranking and SEO and all this other stuff, and I really appreciate it because so much work goes into making these videos. I didn't know that technology and its impact on economic inequality and professional skills from higher education had so much to do with ultralearning. But technology offers an incredible opportunity for innovation. And despite what people say, according to Tim Cook, the Apple CEO, innovation is more than change. It's positive change. But enough of the background talk. Let's talk about the 9 principles of ultralearning. If you guys want to know more about them, I definitely recommend checking the book out. But here's a summary, and of course I'll throw plenty of my thoughts on it as well. Principle 1 is meta-learning. Meta-learning is where you look at the periodic table and you learn about all the different metals of the world. I'm just kidding. That's not metal learning. Meta learning is seeing how a subject works. It forms the map of showing you how to get to your destination without getting lost. Learning languages and multiple different languages in the author, the way he wrote it out, is just a huge example of how this applies to ultralearning. Principle 2 is focus. Focus. This is not a normal thing in 2020, it seems. It has this amazing section on overcoming procrastination, and it's more mechanical than any other that I think I've heard, but it absolutely makes sense. This alone, in my opinion, is enough of a reason to get the book. Because procrastination happens to all of us, and so few of us know how to handle it, especially those of us who experience it the most. He said that when it comes to focus, recognize where you are and start small. From there, principle 3 is directness, which is it's basically directly getting experience. If you're going to learn a language, then go speak the language. I think Ben Horowitz said that the best way to learn how to run a company is to run a company. You simply must get direct experience, doing what you're trying to get good at. Principle 4 is drilling. The author uses a great example of Ben Franklin for how Ben Franklin got better at writing and how that accelerated his ability to persuade people. And it's that you can simply not master hard skills when there's one particular component that you just suck at. And I know what it feels like to feel if someone tells you that you suck at it, that really hurts. It's not easy to take it, but if you can own it, which is talked about in the book especially, let alone this review in Principle 6, there's a serious upside that I think a lot of people nowadays are not really considering, but is definitely fixable and attainable. If you know how to get people to like you as a salesperson, but you don't have the ability to answer any product-related questions they might have, then that is something you need to drill. I don't know why it's called drilling. I really don't understand why it's called drilling, but find someone who knows everything that your customer wants you to know and doing a brain melt, sucking the information out of them. Don't be violent about it. I mean, it's just information. But take it all down and study it so you can speed up your learning process and make more money. Principle 5 is retrieval. Retrieval is something interesting. I think it's being able to remember what you're learning. I got a lot out of this, if not the later principle we're going to talk about that I kind of mixed it up with. I don't know. I always tell people that if you took my memory and you compared it to a walnuts, the walnut would probably be much more likely to remember who the winner is. The reason retrieval is important and that directness isn't enough is that knowledge that isn't in your head can't be used to solve problems. Rephrase it. This is really crazy. When I heard this, I like stopped in my tracks and I was like, whoa, this is nuts. Peanuts, walnuts, all sorts of nuts. Rephrasing what you write down as questions and writing down next to them or under them or something where you can find the answers if you don't know it later on and you're reading the questions is super helpful, allegedly, for example, for retrieval. I've not tried this. It sounds super dope and unique. There are a lot of super dope and unique tips scattered throughout the entire book. Principle 6 is feedback. What he says about feedback, and honestly, all of these, I wouldn't exactly say is analytical in the sense that if you're not the more analytical type, you won't be able to understand it that easily. It's more like a more accessible presentation of analysis, if that makes sense. His research is very well done. It makes a lot of sense, but it's like sneaky. Like I heard a lot of it and I was like, how have I not heard of this before? It all like everything. I feel like I've learned all these things, but I didn't know like what they all have in common and stuff like that. People have given me so much feedback and I got so like butthurt about it a lot that I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna drill this. Like we just went over, I'm gonna get better at it. People don't say that I'm talking too fast in my videos or that the editing is too choppy and scatterbrained as it used to be. They don't say that anymore. I mean, maybe someday they will, but I don't remember the last time it happened. The more feedback you get, the better. Everything that's not true about that, the author talks about, but it's kind of because you seriously get a grip from hearing it and seeing it and tasting it or whatever on what you need to improve upon. And that helps with figuring out what you need to drill. And it's not just people that you'd be getting feedback from. In a lot of ways, it's actually kind of yourself. Principle, which that's a whole different video topic. Principle 7 is retention. And again, honestly, I think I had trouble understanding the differences between retention and retrieval. I think retrieval is like knowing how to find things for yourself when you can't exactly remember them. And retention is learning them in a way that you that you habitually prevent yourself from having to find them. Principle 8 is intuition. This is my favorite if it's not close to my favorite. It's probably like the closest principle here to like magic. And I really like the examples he uses for each principle. Like each person who he talks about mainly in the beginning and then he kind of throws here and there for the rest of it how it applies to that principle. He chose fantastic people for each one. He explained the stories of these people fantastically. Some of them I hadn't even heard of. A good amount of them I knew a thing or two about, like Van Gogh, for example. But to me, it's like almost obvious how curious of a learner the author is. A lot of the things that the author does, even in the end, he's like, you know, this book was kind of like teaching me how to ultra learn for myself. But his telling of their stories is really like almost concrete. I feel like I compare a good amount of authors to this guy just because of how dope this guy is. But it reminded me a little bit of Robert Greene's when Greene explains laws and principles of human nature in his own books. Greene is just a lot more seemingly dispassionate and enigmatic in his work. Principle 9 is this a word? Why did I write this entire word down? Are there two of them? Experimentalization? I thought it was just experimentation, but this is the one where he talks about Van Gogh, and it's about exploring the different possibilities. I think when you do this, like creativity and imagination, which are also like, I love those two so much. Those are like mega factors that are at hand. So, sort of in conclusion of the summary, in these principles and their explanations, the author talks about how to sort of iron out and or avoid problems people typically run into while applying this information, and why they're likely to smash the like button if you haven't already, of course, for the YouTube algorithm, but why those problems are likely to happen in the first place. He talks afterward about different strategies to use to apply the information, and he's like, here, try one thing at a time to see what works, because I ultimately can't tell you how to teach yourself things when, although these things work fantastically with Ultralearning. We all think and acquire knowledge differently. So the idea of this book is that it's not that you should just drop out of school and just learn whatever in whatever way, but more so that you should take control of your learning. It's not about a rejection of opportunities, but more so it's a recognition of the possibilities of learning everything and how they are just much broader than they appear to the I hate to say uneducated eye, but uneducated for lack of a better word. But I do think the book overall is very tight. It's very solid. But a sort of disclaimer here, something to look out for. Let's say you get this book. If you read or listen to it, and you're like me, and you're likely to take in a lot of information to the point where your anxiety drives you nuts. Again, all sorts of nuts, peanuts and walnuts and oak nuts. Are oak nuts a thing? From time to time, I think it's very important to consider what I just said about trying one thing at a time and finding what works for you. The way I see it, to get super good at something super fast, you need to be a mad scientist, but not in the way that other people think. It's more in the way where you are a scientist, constantly trying things and evaluating them, but there is a very important degree of organization and balance and conscious effort that goes into this. So really the only thing that you're mad about per se is doing it effectively and not overthinking it, because then you will drive yourself crazy, and not in the good way that, you know, like all the people in the 9 principles that he talked about were. Maybe that's just my perspective, but like I said, we all learn differently. He who can go to the fountain does not go to the water jar. It pays better to wait than recollect for a moment from within than to look at the page again. When it comes to retention, don't let perfect become the enemy of good enough. Do not ask whether a statement is true before you know what it means. As creativity becomes valuable, experimentation becomes essential. Early self-confidence can create an enthusiasm that leads to continued investment. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who is looking at just, you know, a skill and they're kind of overwhelmed by it. Like, how do I get better at this? Or if you're not overwhelmed, but you are still kind of looking at that skill and you want to get better at it. But like, ultimately, I think the more foreign and, you know, unaware you are of the skill, the newer you are to the skill, the more helpful this book is probably going to be for you. Direction 2. If you like this book, you definitely might like Mastery by Robert Greene. That book is crazy. It's wild. Everything Robert Greene puts out is wild. He's very
consistent, I'd say.
Ultralearning by Scott Young. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews of that, and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out or review, please let me know in the comments below. Also let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to receive a notification every time I drop a new video, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.